Hey, I have a follow-up on my book review of the Hillbilly Elegy. I wanted to save this for a separate post because I thought it was huge. Not necessarily off topic, but this was, I think, my biggest takeaway from this book. And it's a concept called social capital. He addresses this powerfully in the book, but in a very short piece of the book, literally in just a couple of pages, which kind of comes back to my theory that most self-help books really can be told and communicated in a very short number of pages to get the message across. And I thought he did an excellent job of getting the message across in a brief number of pages. Brief, here's an important concept that you need to know, called social capital. Sociologists have come up with this social capital theory that social connections have real, tangible monetary value. It's kind of tough to put an exact dollar amount value on it, but he paints a picture of how social capital made his life possible. He grew up as a hillbilly with almost no prospects of a future. His grandparents, basically encouraged him and told him that he can do anything, the same kind of things that all parents tell their children. But his example was of poverty. He was raised to work hard, where most people from his culture were raised to expect poverty and to live on the government dole. He had a job and had to manage his money and savings, where he witnessed people living on government welfare and living on food stamps, yet these same people living on food stamps had amenities that he couldn't afford. They had cell phones, and big screen TVs somehow, but the government they had to rely on the government to pay for their food, where he didn't have the money to afford a cell phone or a TV at all. He worked hard and saved his money basically just to pay for his food and clothing that he needed. Now, so there's, one part of our culture, or his culture especially, growing up in this super poverty situation, where prospects of going to, breaking out, let me say that, and going to an upper level, one of our most prestigious schools in America, was not even a dream. It was just an impossibility from his perspective. Well, he discovered a way that he could go to Yale Law School. And where I'm trying to get to is his social capital began at Ohio State University, a state school. Not very many people that go to this state school can go to an Ivy League law school or Ivy League school at all. Well, he graduated from a state school, and he was able to get a recommendation from one of his professors at the state school to recommend him to get into Yale. And he was able to find a way to finance it without going into super debt to go to Yale. And then his social capital grew with his colleagues that he studied with, but especially several professors who were willing to go out on a limb and recommend him for a job or recommend him for a certain program. So that is his social capital. He proved to these professors that even though he has a hillbilly background, he was intelligent, he was a hard worker, and he deserved their support. In my life, social capital has come into play with my brother. My brother Craig got me my first job. I was 12 years old, and my brother got me a job working at our local supermarket, a little supermarket called Bowman's Market in a small town, Kaysville, Utah. So I'll give Bowman's Market a shout out there. And my brother Craig got me another job. When I was in high school, I was looking for a job, and my brother talked to a contractor that worked at the market he worked at that basically did the maintenance and floor care. You know, every night they had to clean the floors and do the maintenance on the floors. My brother, my social capital, got that job for me. I mean, I had to come in and interview, and I had to, secure the job, and I had to prove myself and do a good job. And I worked there, for 2 years during high school at night, and was able to finance my life. That's, one brief example of how social capital has worked in my life. That was a very powerful message for me in this book, as my son, Ryan, wants to be a commercial pilot. We are taking steps to get him connected with some social capital in the commercial aviation business. We're going to be meeting with a professional pilot this Sunday and introducing Ryan to him and discussing possibilities and hopefully developing yet another connection for him. So that'll be basically just his second, but a second connection in the commercial aviation business that will hopefully develop into some social capital for him. This was a very powerful impact of this book, Hillbilly Elegy by JD Vance. Please read it. It's a wonderful read and had several very powerful messages that I related to, basically being working class white. His message from the book is centered around working class white in America and the struggles that working class white people have, and how some people deal with it and how other people deal with it. How some people rise above it and are able to make, a very honorable life and enjoy their lives, and how other people basically are human. I was going to say human waste, so I'll go ahead and say human waste. He describes, in hillbilly culture, it's very common for, to walk by a hillbilly house and there'll be 8 kids and 1 parent and just as many dogs, and the 1 parent that is present doesn't have a job, and the government's basically supporting them. And the other side of it are the honorable people who are struggling and working hard to make a life. I guess I got a little off topic there. Really wanted to talk about social capital. I will link some resources on social capital in the description. And that's what's on Paul's mind today.